So what has changed, and is it really practical for the government to consider the possibility, and will the Election Commission take it forward? Joining us now is S.Y. Quraishi, former CEC. Mr. Quraishi, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV18. It is not a new demand, sir. This call was made by the Prime Minister himself earlier this year. It's a matter that has been examined by the Law Commission as well. Now the BJP party president making a fresh pitch for one nation, one poll. But do you believe that it is feasible or practical? Because as I pointed out, GVL Narasimha Rao, who's now a Rajya Sabha MP of the BJP, had categorically in April said that the party had dropped the idea because it was no longer feasible as it required constitutional amendments and there wasn't enough time.
Correct. Actually, you're right, the debate has been going on for 2 years. And why it has gone on for 2 years? Because there was no immediate quick fix for it, no immediate solution, and that was realized by the government. And which is why the Prime Minister has been talking only about the need for debate. I think this latest representation to Law Commission also talks of organizing a debate only, that it needs to be debated, it needs to be discussed, and to that extent it's a good idea. Debate is healthy, debate is good, and let us consider it. And whether it's a good idea or bad idea, it will come out. There is no right or wrong answer. There are pluses, there are minuses. Logistically, it's a very good, convenient thing. For Election Commission, that's the easiest thing to do, because the voter is the same, the polling booth, the polling staff, security, everything is the same. Most convenient. But then there are wider constitutional issues, federal issues, and that's why it calls for a debate.
It certainly calls for a debate, Mr. Quraishi, and as you pointed out, there are arguments both for and against this. But the question that I'm trying to ask is a different one, sir. Do you believe that it is possible at all for this to be taken forward in 2019?
Well, 2019 obviously seems out of the question because there's very little time. And although only way the general election can be held simultaneously with the three major states going to poll is by dissolving the Lok Sabha and holding the election in November. Otherwise, postponing an election is just not constitutionally possible. These states will go to poll anyway on time. They cannot be postponed at all because that is a constitutional mandate. We cannot delay it even by a day. And these state elections are due, I think, by December or latest in January.
Right. You're saying so that, that will not be a possibility. But just for the lay person who may be watching this, in terms of the kind of constitutional amendments that may be required for us to be able to move forward on this idea of one nation, one poll. And it was also suggested that perhaps the Election Commission was in favor of the idea of 1 year, one election. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that is actually a dilution of the original proposal. Original proposal was to hold three-tier elections at the same time, which means Panchayat, Vidhan Sabha and Lok Sabha. Later on, Panchayat election nobody is talking about, which knocks out 30 lakh elected representatives. Now what are we left with? 4,120 MLAs and 543 MPs. And then also the Niti Aayog and the parliamentary committee, they said, okay, if 1 in 5 years is not possible, let us do 2 in 5 years. That is further dilution. Now the third proposal is a further dilution that, okay, if you let us have at least in 1 year or poll, that is also doable, but that will also require a constitutional amendment because either you dissolve the assemblies earlier, which is not entirely possible because dissolution of assemblies for no good reason without breakdown of constitution machinery is not possible. And then how do you delay it? One is you advance, because you see what happens is typically 3-4 states will go to poll, say, in March. Another 3-4 will go in October and November. Now, either you delay or you advance. Now, both will require amendment. Both will require changes. So, the procedure is cumbersome. My point is, if you have already diluted the proposal so much, then what is the fuss about? Then what moral authority is left in the proposal anyway?
Okay, let me also bring in former CEC, Mr. Krishnamurthy, also here with us. Mr. Krishnamurthy, we were just in conversation with Mr. S.Y. Quraishi, your colleague, sir, who's discussing the possibility of this one nation, one poll possibility in 2019, if at all. Your thoughts, sir, because it's not a new idea. It's been discussed and debated threadbare. The proposal has been taken to the Law Commission. It's been debated by the Parliamentary Standing Committee. Today, we thought that the BJP had given up on the idea, but today the BJP party president is reiterating the call for one nation, one poll. Is it at all possible, sir, that we could see this being taken forward for the 2019 elections?
I do not think in 2019 you can have it unless the constitution is amended. Because you are not going to have an election for only one time. It is going to be forever if you want to have an election for the future, you have to amend the constitution. Because
right, so you're saying that you can't make the change just for one election. There have to be constitutional amendments that will have to be changed. Could you take us through what will be the constitutional amendments that will be required, Mr. Quraishi, Mr. Krishnamurthy?
Unless and until you provide for the fixed tenure of the House, even if you hold simultaneous election at one point of time, it doesn't assure you of the future one nation, one poll. So unless the constitution is amended to provide a fixed tenure of the House, I do not think it is possible to hold simultaneous election in 2019.
Okay, you're ruling out that possibility. We were talking about the pros and cons. On the pros side, of course, you know, the government making it clear, the Prime Minister and Mr. Amit Shah in his letter today also making it clear that it will bring down costs, logistics will be eased, people will not spend so much time focusing on going from one election to another election, that officials on the ground will be able to actually focus on delivering as opposed to focusing on elections. But on the con side, whether this puts a question mark on the federal structure, if this will sort of push back the agenda for states and the issues related to state elections. What are your thoughts on whether this at all should be taken forward in a meaningful way? And the idea of the Election Commission to propose a 1 year, one election instead, what do you make of that?
Now, first question is, are we having a federal state or not? There may be federal features in our constitution. It is a quasi-federal state. Now, in the last few years, so many houses were dissolved and president's rule was imposed or governor's rule was imposed. Was it a federal feature? So the constitution has got some federal features, some unitary features. So you cannot say that federalism will be because there are so many simultaneous elections held in parliament and some states where, for example, Orissa or Tamil Nadu, different parties have come to power. Kerala, it has come to power. So I do not know whether there is any merit in the statement that the federal spirit will be affected by having one nation, one poll. But the point is, the crucial issue is that there must be an amendment providing for fixed tenure of the House. Unless and until you have that, it will be very difficult to implement it.
Okay, without that amendment, it will be very difficult to implement it. Quick final thoughts, Mr. Quraishi, I'll come to you. You know, what is it that you would like to see from here on? I would imagine what we've seen today from the party president of the BJP, Mr. Amit Shah, reiterating this call. Perhaps, I don't know, but perhaps this could be something that the Prime Minister brings up in his Independence Day address as well. Would you expect that? We've lost that line with Mr. Quraishi. Mr. Krishnamurthy, my question to you, what would you expect as next steps now that once again this issue seems to be on the front burner?
Well, I suppose it's a subject worth debating. I'm sure people will be debating, and unless you find a solution to the problem, you cannot say that you can go ahead and implement it. So you find a solution. Well, there are advantages in having simultaneous elections. There are also certain demerits in that. But net benefit is you save expenditure. There is so much of hatred and violence at every election. You reduce that. The scope for, saving time, energy, and violence is very much there. So if you are bringing about electoral reforms, straight away there may not be any need for simultaneous election. You are neither bringing about electoral reforms, nor are you cutting down on the expenditure and bringing about some kind of a, peace and order in the elections. So you have to find some solution. I suppose these discussions will take place and some solution will be found.